After seeing this movie and from now on, every time I see a bird, I expect to know a new language. Look, there's one right now. Look at that bird. Mira ese pájaro. Increíble que pueda hablar español, ¿verdad? What is up, everybody? Random Random Man here, bringing you my review for Disclosure Day in one take. Now, the plot of this science fiction thriller follows a former cybersecurity expert who steals top secret information involving extraterrestrials from a secret arm in the US government, with him, along with a meteorologist who suddenly gains psychic abilities, becoming the key towards a possible disclosure day. Going into this movie, I was very much looking forward to seeing it. This is one of my most anticipated films of 2026 for two words and two words alone: Steven Spielberg. This is the latest film from the legendary director. He needs no introduction, as he is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. One of my personal favorites for sure. Top 3 easily. And this is a film covering a topic that he has done multiple times before this one, involving extraterrestrials or aliens. Of course, he brought us such classics like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., the Extraterrestrial, two of my personal favorites from Steven Spielberg. He also brought us his version of War of the Worlds from 2005, and yes, I'm going to count this one, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, as it was right there in the title all along. Before this movie's existence, crystal skulls were believed to be extraterrestrial. And personally, I'm a defender of this movie. This is not the weakest Indiana Jones film, and it's not the weakest one that Spielberg has ever made. I know, hot take, but in any sense, yeah. So we're back to doing aliens from Steven Spielberg, and this being a modern rendition of what he has done in the past, it was going to be interesting either way to see what he was going to do in tackling the subject matter while also being grounded, if you would, despite the whole otherworldly beings being out there. And specifically, I thought it was poetic that this movie released yesterday, Friday, June 12th, as it was the 45th anniversary of Raiders of the Lost Ark, my favorite movie from Steven Spielberg and my favorite movie of all time. Happy 45th Raiders and Indiana Jones. So that was quite cool to know, with that being all connected in full circle with Steven Spielberg. But in any sense, starting out with the cast and their performances, we have Josh O'Connor as Daniel, the aforementioned former cybersecurity expert and ex-con who is basically a whistleblower in taking all of these government secrets involving aliens and possibly letting them out to the world. Now, last year, I thought he really stole the show in the third Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man. Knives Out, excuse me. The third Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man, I thought was very good, mostly for his performance. He even stealing a lot of the thunder from Daniel Craig being the lead there. I've also enjoyed him in a few of the other things that I have seen him in. And here in this film, I thought he gave a very relatable and grounded, understated performance as someone who basically gets thrown into this whole kind of situation because he both believes in it, but is also just trying to see like what is going on altogether and seeing the whole ramifications that are literally in his hands in terms of disclosing the existence of extraterrestrials. I thought he was very good here. There's also Emily Blunt as Margaret, the aforementioned meteorologist who suddenly gains psychic abilities. As I kind of riffed on in the intro of this video, she suddenly gains the ability to speak multiple languages very fluently, like Russian and Korean besides English. So her character is very much central to this film as well. And I think she gives one of her best film performances ever here, easily up there with what she does in the Quiet Place films and Oppenheimer, which she received an Oscar nomination for. I think she deserves an Oscar nomination for this film too. She is asked to do a lot here because of not just how she basically becomes one with these powers after encountering a bird, as I joked about in the intro, and just being thrown into the situation and her becoming so vital as to what is going on and eventually meeting up with Daniel as a character. And yeah, so much is put on her shoulders, and I think it's just great to see her range really be put to the test and succeed exponentially here. So I think that was great to see with her. Other members of the cast include Colin Firth as Noah, the lead of this whole secret arm of the government, who is basically the movie's villain and is trying to stop all of this from being disclosed. He is quite an imposing presence, even from afar, because of what he is able to do basically remotely in trying to chase down our main characters here. And I thought he fit for what the movie was calling for, not being too over the top, but also us seeing that, yeah, he's someone trying not to have all this leaked out of nowhere in any sense. There's also Eve Hewson as Jane, the girlfriend to Daniel and a former nun. And I think not much is being given credit towards her with the performance that she gives here. I thought she really stood out in this movie along with Emily Blunt, as she is thrown into the situation too, being kidnapped by this top secret government force before being let go in the hands of Daniel early on in the movie, before they go on the run after he makes off with those top secret files and all this other stuff here. And she's asked to go through a lot as well, because she doesn't know what's happening, but then eventually knows all the stuff involving aliens. And she has one particular sequence that involves her and Colin Firth that is some of the best physical acting I've seen, along with Emily Blunt in this film too. So it's quite a feat that I think both of the main women in this movie are the standouts of this film. And then there's also Wyatt Russell as the boyfriend to Emily Blunt's character, who doesn't have that much to do, but he does his job for what is asked for. And the last major player that I cannot forget is Coleman Domingo as Hugo. He is a defector of the same organization that Colin Firth's character is in charge of, and he's an advocate for disclosure. And he's been having quite a year so far in 2026. I mean, earlier this year, he played Joe Jackson in the Michael Jackson biopic. And then just a couple of weeks ago, he was such a standout in the series finale of Euphoria with his character. He previously won a Primetime Emmy Award for that series, deservingly so. Here, he's basically the soul of this movie, if you would. I would say that Emily Blunt is the heart of the film, while Coleman Domingo is the soul, because he's like the voice of reason in a lot of different ways, talking to Daniel when he gets a chance to on the burner phones, and that's the whole idea in our main character is trying to go towards his location, as he is an advocate for disclosure while also building something in secret that I don't want to give away. That is pretty integral once it gets introduced in the plot. But all these performances here, I think all the main central performances are quite strong, especially with Emily Blunt and Eve Hewson. Now getting into the writing. The writing of this film was done by David Koepp. He wrote the screenplay here, but it comes from a story by Steven Spielberg. So even though a different person was the one who penned the script, you can tell that this is something right out of Steven Spielberg's mind and heart in many ways, because he is trying to do something that is connecting towards our whole society today and the world over. The movie begins with the world basically on the brink of World War III, and Josh O'Connor's character is being chased down by this agency and makes off with all of these secret files involving aliens. And basically, the movie is just an elongated chase sequence, if you would, with moments broken up in between to where we get a bunch of progression and some sort of detailings to go about the reasoning of why the characters are doing this, also seeing the villain's motivations, all this other stuff put in between, all going concurrently with Emily Blunt's character being a meteorologist and suddenly gaining these abilities, with O'Connor and Hewson's characters on the run, before eventually all this does converge. But I'm not trying to give away spoilers here with how the movie really is something that is very thrilling and thought-provoking, very thoughtful, I should say, because of what is done on the page. On the page, we get to see that there's a lot of big ideas being played with. This movie, I would say, is a spiritual successor to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, because now we're in a modern day rendition of it, though the world was not on the brink of collapse in that older movie. In this movie, the stakes are more dire, and also just seeing what can come about if the world suddenly knows about all of these beings existing. We're not being the only ones as humans in the world too. Now, me personally, without getting too much into it, yes, I do believe in aliens. I do think aliens exist. Aliens, I believe, are out there. We're not the only ones, but I'm not going to go into a whole dissertation about it right now. But in any sense, yeah, the movie is playing with that idea, of course, but also mixing in other thematic elements that are introduced early on, like religion, with one of the main characters being a former nun, also just the idea of the world being affected by all of this and what we mean in terms of our own humanity and what it means to like have this information, having to disclose it, wanting to disclose it, all this other stuff together. It's really thoughtful in many ways, and it plays up all this together being put into play. I will admit, when it gets into the third act, the second act going into the third act, once a certain point is reached, without giving it away, the movie kind of gets a bit ham-fisted, if you would, in terms of like going into the more kind of emotional or sentimental kind of way. It involves Blunt's character. Again, I don't want to give it away because it was building up to that certain point. But what is made up for it is that after that, we get into a stronger section where it goes into the final act of the movie and it continues on the thrilling pace that the movie was going with from the first place. And that brings me into the directing by Steven Spielberg. It's no exaggeration to say that he directs the crap out of this movie. He knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for decades and decades, and at his age, becoming a veteran filmmaker as he is, it's no secret that he knows how to have a vision for all of this, keeping us at a ground level, bringing us in much closer or further away when it calls for it in terms of the narrative, and just a keen eye for everything that has gone into here. The movie keeps up a certain cadence about it that for the first 2/3, for sure, going into the third act, it was just almost nonstop, even in slower moments, because we were getting crucial information and getting to know these characters, because I really came to care about most of them. And he's good with character work, I should say. And having all of this be put in with a strong, keen eye for whatever else that he is doing here. The technical elements of this movie coming together see him collaborate with some frequent players that he has done a bunch of movies with in the past. Cinematography-wise, he teams up again with Janusz Kaminski for giving us a sterile look, I should say, but it's a very kind of grainy, sterile look. It's an interesting mix, I would kind of describe it as, because the movie is very clean, it's very well shot, of course, by Kaminski, also giving us a more kind of gritty angle as to what we're seeing from the ground level. He's playing a lot with lens flares and lighting, and also in camera movements. There's a sequence in particular around a farmhouse where O'Connor's character is trying to run around, sneak around. The way the camera just bobs and weaves and moves around, I was like, wow, this is inspired camera work right here. And it also goes into play with how the movie goes into two specific chase sequences. The whole movie is basically a long chase sequence, as I've described, but that chase sequence that starts out with O'Connor's character sneaking around, and then another one involving a train. So that's all classic Steven Spielberg right there, and the cinematography is A1 in that regard. The way the movie moves all together and is cut, I will admit it's a little long at about 2 hours and 25 minutes. Never boring, but I did feel like the cogs of this movie's pace were kind of showing themselves a bit going into the third act, but I think that's a minor issue, if you would, with how the rest of the movie is just so eye-catching. I saw this movie in my movie theater chain's version of a premium large format, so the large 4K laser projection was stunning with the cinematography, as I said. The way this movie has modern technology mixed in with all of the futuristic type of tech that we're also seeing be used, it reminded me a bit of Minority Report, another Steven Spielberg film, in that it's mixing futuristic elements with modern day elements, although are we not so far off from the future with the element of AI? That's even joked about later on in this movie, so I thought that was a funny little tidbit. The movie also just going from location to location. The original score from John Williams. I mean, this guy is 94, I believe, and he is still composing film scores, and he is just one of the masters. He's one of the greatest composers of all time. Yes, I'm counting him along with classical music composers like Beethoven, Mozart, and Vivaldi, all of that. And this is probably my favorite original score he has done in quite a while. It had tinges of Indiana Jones in between, while also having an urgency with like the modern pace and rush that the film was going for, and being this whole long chase sequence. A lot of piano, a lot of droning elements too when there's danger or just the villains are showing their heads here. All of that together, it's just so beautifully composed here. And then how the movie just comes together by the third act and how it concludes. Now, like I said, I thought it ended so strong in terms of like what it eventually amounts to, even with the minor moments that are leading into that, having me think like, okay, is the movie laying it on a little too thick maybe? I mean, I was feeling the running time a little bit. Visually, the movie is stunning, as I said, but there are some elements involving animals that were created using visual effects that were not so convincing. They felt like they came out of the Adventures of Tintin that Steven Spielberg did with Peter Jackson a decade and a half ago, but mixed into live action. They weren't bad, but they weren't 100% seamless with what the rest of the movie was doing visually. But I can excuse that mostly because I think in the context of what happens in that one sequence when they're mostly present is kind of like out of a dream. That's all I'm going to say. I really don't want to give away too many details, because what is eventually revealed or disclosed, pun intended, by the end of this movie is something that shows off how there is still a bunch of magic in strides with what Steven Spielberg is doing as a filmmaker. He exudes what he has done for decades now, and hopefully will continue to do for another while, because of everything that he's done in between, whether with Aliens in the past, with my favorite movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the Adventures of Indiana Jones altogether, and even other more realistic real-life type subjects involving war or politics, anything in between. He mixes a lot of themes and elements together that is just not necessarily a one-to-one science fiction film. He plays a lot with ideas that I think many people will grab towards, but I can tell by the time the movie ends, you're either going to be on board with you're either going to be on board with it or not. Almost lost my train of thought and my words here, because there's a lot that I want to literally disclose without getting into spoilers, but anything that this movie is doing altogether reinforces that, yes, Steven Spielberg still has it, and that this movie also has a sense of hope and humanity with it too. And I think that on that front, the movie lays it on at a well-purposed level here that I think anyone watching it will get a lot out of it and will be able to see that it's full of this is what I get for doing this at one take. Yeah, that passing by. But with this being put on an entertainment front, whether you're watching this as a movie or if you're watching this as an alien enthusiast or just anyone else who really believes in extraterrestrials, all of that, any kind of front you're coming from in terms of watching this movie, I think that this is something that is well worth seeing, especially in theaters on the big screen. This isn't my favorite movie that Spielberg has done recently. Of the last couple of decades, my favorite movie that Spielberg has done is his version of West Side Story from 2021. Not only was this my favorite movie of that year, but I also think it's superior to the 1961 version. It's one of my favorite movies of the decade so far. And there's other movies that he's done in the last couple of decades too that maybe I would put over Disclosure Day, but it is a testament to show that he has made so many movies that are outright masterpieces and are on all-time favorites or best lists that it's hard for him to put a new movie into the fray and expect us to have the same level of quality, when the quality here is still notable, and I think it's something that I definitely recommend seeing. With all of that being said, my final verdict for Disclosure Day is 4 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Disclosure Day. Social media links in the description. Subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.